round, and of course it brings back a lot of memories. Are you familiar with this museum? Have you been in here before?
Yes.
Yeah. I was looking at this picture here, you know, it's a bit confusing. A lot of people think that these gentlemen are way out on the course somewhere. But in fact, you know where Martyr's Monument is there? That was Methven's Tower. So in fact they're just round about the second tee. The reason it looks as if the town's in the distance was that there was nothing past that cobbled end of Market Street at that time. And of course the old captain's balls there, eh? That was a great tradition, that, in the Royal and Ancient, which they still keep going, but aye, look at these clubs there, eh? They're similar to mine. You know, there's my eyesight's failing me now, but now here we go, there's a set of clubs here from James Ogilby Fairley. Now he was my great mentor, you could say. I was so impressed with this man that I named my second son after him, James Ogilby Fairley Morris. Now he was captain of the Royal and Ancient in 1851, and he was instrumental in me going down to Prestwick. Of course, as you can see, with wee Alan Robertson there, we were ball makers. Hey, take these. You know, I started my career as a ball maker, and near the end of it, I'm still advertising them. Of course, Alan Robertson and I, just from that wee cottage just on the corner of the 18th Green, that was all that was there, you know. That and the Clerks, that was a sort of feudal house where the Drying Green was, where Ruswick's Hotel is now. But, Alan and I used to just pass balls out the window there. You can see all the equipment. I've even brought one with me here. You know, on a good day, I could maybe make 2 of these balls. I started working with them in about, I was just a young man in about 1838. And we made these balls all the way up until, of course, the new gutter ball took its place. Alan Robertson and I fell out over that, but, well, of course, he was worried he was going to lose his income, you see. I mean, his father and his father and his father before them were all ball makers in the town. Eh? But we didn't fall out for long, you see. Alan and I, we played foursomes together. 2-ball foursomes, that was the main game at that time. Eh? And from 1842 up until Alan's untimely death in 1859, we were never beaten. Grand matches up to, believe it or not, 10,000 people would come down and see Morris and Robertson playing against the Park brothers at Musselburgh, or the Duns at North Berwick. Eh? That was a great breakthrough, you see, that from that feathered ball to the gutter ball. Simple idea, that, you know, just a bit of Malaysian sap it was. You just reacted to heat, you see. So you put it in a bucket of hot water, you'd cut it into strips, and you just hand rolled it out onto the table. So at that time, 1849, suddenly the ball is affordable and the course is accessible because, of course, the railways. That was the big boom, you see. They linked up all these areas. That's why it was instrumental in Fairley sending me down to Prestwick there. And I say we'd lost our livelihood, but you know, we were still playing these grand matches. You got Alan's driver there. You know, Alan was never beaten. That's it there, I think. Never beaten in the annals of the game. And you could say he chose his games wisely. You can see the whip on that, huh? Oh, yeah. You can see how he's put a leather facing in it. He called this play club the Doctor. You see the waggle on it? Right? Of course, with big hands, these early champions, and of course it was just an open stance and just a hammer grip, and you just let the whip of the club do the work for you. Eh?
That's awesome.
I like that.
It's like my swing now.
Yeah, I like that.
Of course, Alan was only 5'4.5". Eh? Of course, I was only 5'5.5". It's amazing how you grow 6 inches when you've been dead for 150 years.
Very well.
I got better.
So you know, he was the first man to break 80 on the old course in 1858. That was considered miraculous at that time. And the crack amateur player at that time was maybe going round in the spring or the autumn meeting in about 105. So, eh?
Oh.
That was some score.
Like you, Ray.
Yeah, keep rubbing it in. Not even close.
And that's
but
memorized.
We'll amuse him.
But I was, you know, when I say I was sent down to Prestwick with Fairley there, his great partner, the Earl of Eglinton. He played with him in foursomes. Of course, he had this big fancy estate, and again, it seems the train's linking up the Linksland. So from Glasgow down to Ayr, it went through his big estate, and it was his right to just flag the train down and get a free lift. So of course he had a wee patch of ground at Prestwick where he used to course his greyhounds, and they would play about round that area, so he had the idea to invite me down. I went down there with my son Tommy, just born, and my wife Nancy, and I just rolled the sleeves up and that he's using. You know, when I say it was a big change, you know, it was £half a crown for one of these balls. Now that was about half of a man's weekly wage.
Really?
Oh, aye.
Really?
And it wasn't so much the price of the
How
ball.
do they harden it?
Yeah.
How do they make it firm?
I'll tell you about that. Because I used to use a chest clamp to compress and push these feathers into the ball. You can see how there's a jilly jar there where they've got the fine goose down, which is mashed into a sort of mulch, you see. And I mean the leather there, it's soaked in alum overnight, and then I say using this chest clamp, I compress and push these feathers into that ball. Gives you an idea how few folk were playing, you know. In a good year we'd maybe make 2,000 of these balls, and we'd distribute them all over Britain. St Andrews, the metropolis of golf, it was known as, and that was in the 18th and the 17th century, but it was just a game for the toughs, it was a game for the gentry, those that actually had inherent wealth or leisure time, unlike us.
We lost 10 of those today.
Well, it was the Earl of Eglinton, he presented that belt, the challenge belt, and it was something that him and Fairley would have probably competed for themselves maybe 30 years before in jousting or art. It's a sad affair, wasn't it?
How old was he?
Well, you know, he was 24. It's, you know, we were playing an exhibition match. It was the 6th of September, it was. 1875 it was. We were playing against the Dunn brothers at North Berwick. Of course, Tommy wasn't keen to go. He'd just married his bonny wife, Margaret, just the year before, and she was heavy with their first child. Oh, she bullied us, insisted that he went. Of course, there's £25 a side bet, so we went, and yeah, we were winning easy, but well, we hit a bit of sand in the parks. The Duns came back at us, and we just managed to win on the last green. But unfortunately, a telegram had arrived saying that both Margaret was struggling with his child in labour, and we had to make our way post haste back to St Andrews. There was a Mr. Lewis. He was the sponsor of the match down there, and he put up his schooner on a full crew and took us straight across the Firth of Forth. But unbeknown to us, another telegram had arrived saying that both Margaret and his firstborn son had died. It was a long, weary crossing across that Firth of Forth. That haunted look Tommy had on his face haunts me still, like the early photographs I carried of him. You know, his grief was insurmountable. Within 4 months, he too was, you know, we tried, he started drinking. He never had a drink in his life, apart from Christmas and New Year, or celebrating his great wins, but his drinking just got steadily worse, and his heart just wasn't in anything. It was up in the cathedral ground there, with his wife and bairn. And so we tried, we bullied him, we even set up a golf match. You played against him.
David Strath.
The whole town came out, and Tommy and I were playing, and he just broke down near the turn there, and we just dispersed. He just went so quick. We had one last chance with him. It was the beginning of November. Our captain Molesworth put out a challenge in the Scottish field, saying that one of his sons would play any professional for a third, meaning he'd get a shot every third hole. And no, he wasn't keen. That was a mistake, it really was. We cajoled him into it. Of course, it was a sleet, and there was high winds and frost, and because he was so run down, he developed pneumonia. Oh, I mean, it was the usual match, you know, 12 games in the 6 days. And, oh, he was winning easy despite all that, but Molesworth insisted on playing on. He seemed to rally just 1 week before Christmas. He went over to Edinburgh to visit some of his friends. He came back Christmas Eve, went up to visit his mother. She was an invalid by this time. I heard him get up on Christmas morning, and when he wasn't coming down, I went up to see, and there he was, lying as peaceful as I'd seen him since Margaret had died. and he too was dead. Because of the suddenness of it, they did an autopsy at the cottage hospital. Said he'd burst an artery in his lung. People say he died of a broken heart, but if that was true, wouldn't he be here either? There's a fine monument to him up in the cathedral ground. It was contributed by the 60 clubs that were in existence, and a fine epitaph to him. Beneath the sod, poor Tommy's laid, bunkered now for good and all. A better golfer never played a further or a surer ball. Amongst the monarchs of the green, for long he held imperial sway, but none the start nor end between could match with Tommy on his day. A triple laurel round his brew, a glint of triumph in his ee. We see him stand before us now, as in his hour of victory. Thrice belted knight of peerless skill, again we see him head the fray, and memory likes to reckon still the feats of Tommy on his day. Thank you, Bob. Maybe that's why I was just charging him £1 a day.
How many courses have you designed?
Well, I was involved in about 78 courses in all. Yeah, from Shetland down to Westward Ho, and I walked every one of their venues. And of course, young James Braid that became part of the triumvirate, and of course Willie Park Jr.'s son, they came round the back of my shirt tails and converted all these holes. You know, it's like when we were talking earlier about the golf ball, you know, it's always been the big factor. When I retired in 1902, along came this new ball, a bounding ball, an American idea, a Haskell, and suddenly there was panic. The new greenkeeper, Hugh Hamilton, he went and tried to lengthen the course. He went and put these stupid wee bunkers in, which the professionals call spittoons, just to protect the image of the course, because this bounding ball was putting another 40 or 50 yards on it. But it just shows you that all these different traditions. As you know, it was like a constant battle, tradition against technology or technology against tradition. So as I say, there's nothing that would surprise me there. I mean, you come up here to Willie Ochterlorry's workshop. Of course, that still stands there across the road. Willie's claim to fame, you know, he was a young man when he played in it. He was 21 when he won his Open Championship. But he was the only man that won the Open Championship using the clubs that he'd made himself. And he just used 5 clubs. Of course, the St Andrews Golf Club was housed at the back of his workshop, so they decided, which is now an international idea, seemingly, that to have a 5-club competition in honour of him. And it's a thing they still play for today. If you were told that he would be the last nationalised home-based Scot to win the Open for nearly 100 years, they would have just laughed at you. That was the way of it. I remember that Open in 1891. It was really, as I say, the emergence of this triumvirate and the whole game just taking off, you know. And the top 10, there was 8 of the top 10 of that Open Championship were members of the St Andrews Golf Club. 2 brothers, winner and runner-up, the Kirkcaldies. So we would never have believed from that moment on that we would just get further and further out of this picture as the whole game just took off. I suppose you want to know how I died.
Yes.
Well, I was made an honorary member of the new club. You know, if you were to ask me about all the courses that I built, the one that, unfortunately, is the only one that still has its greens in the same position as the new course. We built that in 1895. See, because of this new bounding ball, young James Braid and Willie Park Jr. were round the back of me and lengthening courses. And there was a great panic going on, wasn't there?
So how did you die?
Oh, I thought I was trying to avoid that.
My son.
Well, I was made an honorary member of the new club. It was built, we called it the new club, it was built in 1902. I mean, I was an honorary member of the Royal and Ancient, but I knew my place. I didn't feel comfortable going on there. Even when I was working, I just tapped on the window, the side window to the Secretary Graces. They say it didn't seem fitting that I should be in there with the gentlemen. Anyway, I was happy to be with my cronies in the new club, and I used to go down there for a couple of whiskies at lunchtime, you know, and maybe a bottle of Blackstrap. It's just a stout with soda in it. Anyway, one day I maybe had one too many of them, and I was trying to find the steps to the lavatory, and I mistook him for the wine cellar steps, and of course I took a tumble and fractured my skull and died the next morning in the cottage hospital. After all I lived through it.
How old were you?
I didn't die of natural causes. I was 3 weeks short of my 87th birthday.
Wow.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
But you're back. You're back.
I got
I can see this whole conversation is going to start deteriorating. So I'm just going to say to you, before I decompose, I'm going to take my leave of you and just let you have a wee wander yourself. Anyway, thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Joe.
you very well.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Oh, we need a picture. Can we get a picture?
Aye, that'll be fine. Yes. Of course, we won't come out in the exposure.
Did you live on Pillmore Place?
Aye, I did indeed.
6?
Of course, I ended up just above the shop because I'd run out of family. You know, the last one to die was Joff, I told you about, James Ogilvy Fairley Morris. He ran the shop for me. He died in 1906, wasn't it? Were you still around when I was around?
Just.
When did you? So when did you die?
What year? When was it 18 holes?
Well, I'll tell you about that because I acquired more ground in 1870. And when we had first opened here in 1873, we played it in a modern way. We'd acquired more ground on this area here, the seaside, you see. And so that was why we adapted it into 18 holes. And I'm trying to think whose decision it was. Somebody in the Royal and Ancient Greens Committee decided to show it off the modern way, playing it anti-clockwise rather than the traditional way. I mean, we used to rest the course all the way up to about, until my retirement about 1902. You just went down to the first tee. And if the flag was red on the 17th green, you were playing it the modern way. If it was white, you were playing to that first green, the 17th, you see. It was a way, you see, there wasn't very much labour. We used to give us a hand just filling in divots, and there was a bit cut and sand, you know. So it was a way of alleviating the wear and tear of the course to just alternate it, you know, from week to week.
And why 18 holes? And
Well, it was just really, it was about the ground, you know. I mean, people ask me that. I mean, it was 12 holes at Prestwick because that's all I could fit in there. I mean, they did eventually acquire more ground. There was 9 at Musselburgh, there was 9 down at North Berwick, there was 22 in Montrose. They had plenty of ground. And so it just became a standard thing. I suppose in a way it was because when we were all invited to play in that first championship, which was to become the Open Championship, we played 3 times round the 12-hole course in the one day. And then when, of course, Musselburgh came online and St Andrews, Musselburgh was a 9-hole course, so we played 4 times round in the one day. And then, of course, showing off this modern way of playing the course, it was 18 holes, and everybody came online really after that. Prestwick managed to get more ground, and they became 18 holes in about 1882. And it just became a standard way of playing.
so not 18 shots of whiskey.
No. That would just be 9 holes, because my whiskies were all large ones.